Welcome in. We're back with another shadow work topic today. We are discussing a formula that I use to dissolve interpersonal conflict. What is really great about this formula is that the sequence of events, the emotions that flow through, lead to feeling love for yourself, love for the other person. This natural forgiveness arises almost to where there's really nothing to forgive. And I tend to notice that I have feelings of gratitude that come up at the end because I'm able to know myself as someone who can generate peace of a situation, and it is totally independent. That's the other thing that's really great about this method I'm going to teach you today, is that it doesn't depend upon another person giving you permission to feel good. They don't have to meet you halfway. They don't have to apologize. You don't need to talk to the other person at all. The other thing that's really great about what I'm going to share with you today is that it's not a force. I need to be the bigger person, or holding resentment, or you're convincing yourself to feel these things for the other person. It just happens naturally and there's no effort. It just is a byproduct of following the steps that I'm going to share with you. I'm also going to share the conflict, and I'm going to get very specific on what it was that led me to apply this in my life most recently. I do want to ask that you pay attention as I'm sharing and notice if you are approaching this from a right or wrong lens. Do you find yourself listening and saying, oh, he's wrong, she's right, he's wrong? If you notice that you're doing it, I do ask that you try to suspend the judgment, because part of this, it's very simple, but in order for this to work, you have to be able to put aside the need to be right. And that can be hard, but the formula itself is really simple. And that is the practice. Also, I would say that it's probably easiest to try this when there is not that much like karmic glue with the other person. What I mean by that is, if this is a family member or someone who's a spouse or a loved one, it may be a little bit more difficult to apply this when it's these deep-rooted familial wounds. I still believe that the same formula would work. It's just that it's probably easier to build up by practicing on things that are a little bit easier to let go of. In my case, it's kind of a medium, because these are people who are not reoccurring characters in my life, but I held a lot of respect for them. And so the wound is a little deeper than someone who you don't know, don't respect. But either way, this formula will work with any time that you feel dismissed, hurt, frustrated, slighted, anything like that. So let's get into it. On this channel, I share my personal insights and stories on healing lessons, on shadow work, on my mental health journey. And the idea is that we are discussing the true way that consciousness evolves, that humans grow in application and not just in theory, through my lived experience. And in a way, we're doing this together. And that's why my channel is called Journey with Paloma, because in my share, I hope that it helps to create the insights and kind of a shortcut for you, and helps you to find inner peace and true love and deep trust. The scenario that I'm going to talk about today is my experience with spiritual teachers. It was the same exact situation both times, in the sense that they're going around the room and everybody is sharing their insights, sharing the things that they struggle with, and asking the male teacher for help on a certain issue with their life. And when it was my turn to share, they dismissed what I was talking about or what I brought to the discussion, and instead talked about themselves. So recently, with this other spiritual teacher, we were in a satsang about Christ consciousness. And at the end of the class, I had raised my hand, but then I put my hand down because we were pressed for time. He said, Paloma, I noticed you had your hand up earlier. Is there something you wanted to add? So because I was called on, I decided I was going to take the opportunity, but I had already put the book away. So I kind of had to awkwardly fumble, open the book, find the passage, and then I said my point. So I said, okay, I'll take the opportunity. To my surprise, he doesn't react to what I say. Instead, he decides to say, when I'm really nervous at work, I tend to ramble, and that must not feel too good for everybody else in the room. And he says, but that's my own insecurity, he said. It was the same pattern as the other teacher, where they've ignored what I'm talking about, and then instead they decide to make a comment about themselves and the way that they process. Class concluded, and I was just in like a freeze, and he just said, okay, well, that concludes satsang. We're going to do closing prayers. A couple hours pass, and I'm like, that didn't feel good. That didn't feel right with me. And I was realizing that I had seen this before, and I remembered how it felt the first time, and started thinking, like, why is this pattern happening? What is it about me to evoke this reaction? What is it about me that makes them respond to me this way? And I decide that I'm going to talk to some friends about it. They said, you should journal about it. So I did, and I'm actually going to go ahead and read you exactly what I journaled, and then we're going to break down why the journaling itself was the formula and why it worked and why it was so effective. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is that these are just my feelings. I could be totally wrong. Maybe a second teacher misunderstood my comment and he thought that what he was saying was directly related. My journaling doesn't mean that this is true. It's just what I'm feeling. Okay? So here's what I put. Invalidation. You make me feel unheard, so I will do the same to you. They think that I want to dominate the conversation and to intellectually bully, so they're going to humble me. As men, we have boundaries about giving. Women give even when they're not getting, but not us. Maybe I remind them of someone dismissive. I don't always respond in the socially accepted way. I can take my time to emotionally process. I can lean on my intellect. I lead with this. When I expect to be heard anyway, and I'm not, it's confusing for me. Why am I so, quote, bad that I can't be met compassionately? Why can't I have off days, be imperfect, ramble, have insecurities, projections, crutches, illusions, blind spots? Why am I a target? Yes, as I write this, my heart feels heavy. It feels unfair, harsh. With teacher number 1, I got a bit angry. With teacher number 2, just more sad. Both were confusing. Both were critical. Teacher number 1 said it was to get me to feel. Who told them that this was the way to teach? I guess maybe Sri Yukteswar was harsh to Yogananda. Yogananda loved his guru so much that nothing could insult him. A divine swan of pure love. God, grant me this level of love, please. Creator, if it doesn't change anything either way in my small life, please grant me this love in the moment. My instinct is to assuage, to smooth over, but to myself I spiral. What did I do wrong? I self-abandon. So this is a decision point. I choose to no longer let the situation take from my experience. It is a self-violence that I don't want. So very simply, it hurt my feelings. It made me question myself, and now I let it go. I send him love. I send myself love as well. God, grant me, please, the ability to truly love myself and everyone else in saintly ways. To Christ's level, let it begin with peace in my heart. Let it be clean and pure and true and strong. Let it be born of strength and clarity. And then I started writing to myself. I wrote this. I love you as you are, Paloma, on your best and your worst days. When you feel like you get it wrong, when you feel like you get it right, when you're awkward, when you overshare, when you trauma dump, when people are cruel to you and you pretend not to notice, when you worry, when you're over apologetic, when you get too stern, when you get too agreeable, when you cry, when existential dread finds you, when you're stuck in your mind. I accept you totally. I see you as precious and as perfect. I love you totally as is. You are courageous. Now I send this love to all. May everyone feel this way about themselves. Focus on loving yourself first, and then it's easy to send the love out in interpersonal conflict. This is the compassion Ram Dass talked about. It's all one. Find Ram Dass quote I wrote. True forgiveness is natural. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to practice this and to know myself in this way. Self-acceptance is the key. I'm not striving to be perfect. I'm practicing loving myself as is over and over and over again. Okay, that was powerful. Let me take a few breaths. The first thing that I want to mention is that what led me to bridge my hurt to forgiveness was the comparison that came up as I was journaling to Paramahansa Yogananda and his guru, Sri Yukteswar. And because I so admire Yogananda, I saw him almost as a role model or template for the kind of love that I wanted to be capable of embodying, which then guided the prayer that I wrote. To kind of help explain why my heart softened the way that it did, I want to share the passage from Autobiography of a Yogi that I thought about as I was writing. Paramahansa Yogananda describes a moment with his guru who had been stern with him. Sri Yukteswar says, "On earth, my standards were uncomfortably high, unsuited to the natures of most men. Often I scolded you more than I should have. You passed my test. Your love shone through the clouds of all reprimands. I have also come today to tell you, never again shall I wear the stern gaze of censure. I shall scold you no more." How much I had missed the chastisement of my great guru. Each one had been a guardian angel of protection. And Yogananda says, "Dearest master, rebuke me a million times. Do scold me now." Sri Yukteswar replied, "I shall chide you no more." His divine voice was grave, yet with an undercurrent of laughter. "You and I shall smile together so long as our two forms appear different in the Maya dream of God." What was so powerful for me is that this passage, and honestly throughout the book, just as he described, it was like in the hermitage with his guru. There were a lot of moments of examples of Sri Yukteswar's real strictness and kind of criticism, and how he didn't let his ego interfere. It was kind of a template for me of a vibration of love. And I could see that it is possible that even in moments of misunderstandings or frictions, that the power of love can transform those. And then it's kind of an initiation into compassion and devotion and connection. And a lot of people can relate to this with their love of Christ. So maybe Christ is your role model and it's not Yogananda. Maybe it's a family member who was very saintly, and kind. I do recommend starting with finding a role model for the situation. It actually was really fitting that for me it's Yogananda, because it was a teacher-student dynamic, and that is where the trigger occurred, teacher-student dynamic. So it might even be better if the role model that you pick is aligned with the scenario. So if it's between mother and child, it could be like Mother Mary and Jesus Christ, for example. If it's between sisters, if it's like a sister feud or a brotherly feud, that you find a role model of sisterhood that really brings warmth to your heart and tears to your eyes. And you think, oh man, I would just love to hold that vibration and I would love to be transformed by that. For me, the journaling was how I can get to access my emotions. It is a way that kind of placates my analytical mind into a doorway to my emotions. So journaling could be something that I could recommend for you too. But I've also seen Instagram, I see one woman who just like talks to herself. And so she asks a question and then she just answers it. And that's another way of inner exploration, but anything that allows you to start getting real about how you feel. And for me, it was journaling. So that would be the next part of the formula. So it'd be to find a role model, to find the way to start feeling, admitting how you feel about the situation. And even the part where I journaled about the gratitude, I didn't know that I was going to journal that. It just flowed from me. That's more proof that I wasn't forcing myself to accept triggers as a lesson. Like, I'm not that wise that I would do that on my own. I mean, and I guess I did, but I wouldn't have done it naturally, without having done this. This is, again, more proof that you're not forcing yourself to be a bigger person. It is just the natural unfolding of the following these steps, because I loved feeling the way that I felt, and I wouldn't have known myself to feel this way if it weren't for this experience of having been slighted by somebody that I respect. And ironically, that was the topic of the satsang. And so maybe this teacher was just really brilliant and was like, here, I'm going to give you your first assignment. Maybe it was consciousness that was speaking through him to trigger me. But either way, regardless, it did give me that opportunity to practice being, and it gave me the chance to be. I wrote it there. This is a decision point, and I get to choose in this moment who I want to be in this situation. The other thing was that my friends were the ones who told me that I should journal about it, and it didn't naturally occur to me again to process it in this way. Although I didn't see it immediately for the opportunity that it was, I do have a good, network that helped me to find that. Okay, let's break down the formula. The first step would be to feel your emotions fully. And I, in this case, use journaling to do that. You might not. You maybe use music, poetry. Maybe you just talk to yourself. Maybe it comes really natural to you and you can literally just emote. You sit there and you emote. That's great. The next thing that I did was that I asked a force greater than me to help me. I asked wholeheartedly to be given the love necessary to overcome the situation. And the third thing would be that I found an emotional role model that allowed me to strongly tap into the feelings that I wanted to feel, so that it wasn't this ideal, but that I could conjure up those feelings in me through the experience of Yogananda with his guru. The next thing would be to accept yourself exactly as you are in this moment. This too included what you're doing. Then when you start to really feel that self-love, you're kind of wanting to cry, you're feeling love for yourself, the fourth step would be, yes, feel it, love it, feel how good that feels, but then immediately share it and say, now this same intensity of love that I'm feeling for me, I feel for you. I hope that the whole world can feel this. And that includes the person that you had the issue with to begin with. And then the last thing is just to notice the gratitude of how powerful it is to know yourself and see yourself in that way, and how this person really was your teacher, whether they meant to or not. It's not forcing, it's not trying, you're just truly grateful. And the best part is that you were able to find resolution without needing to look anywhere else. And it's something that you can gift yourself. And this naturally gives rise to a sense of closure. And I believe that this is what the meaning of Christ consciousness is. I think that this is the application of it. It's totally independent of anybody else. And do you ideally get to the point where you're not triggered to begin with? I don't know necessarily. This on its own is huge. Perhaps, with years of practice, then you just naturally quicker in the process. You're able to have Christ consciousness immediately. That's something that I still have yet to discover, and I'll definitely come back with a video the moment that I'm able to do it on the spot, and I'll tell you how I did it. And if you are able to do it, please share with me how you do it. Let me know if this works out for you, if you try it, and I'm sending so much love.